Hey, Jasmine,
Hi,
what's going on? How are you?
here in Madeira.
All right. Yeah, I heard you're in Madeira Island at the Savoy Palace, if that's correct.
Yeah, no, the Nomad Village, Punta de Sol. We have a group here staying at the Savoy Hotel. I've already spent 2 weeks in Punta de Sol. Both places are great experiences.
It's amazing. So yeah, we've had a chance to catch up here in Portugal with one of your good friends, Gene, who's super cool. And I think I saw you here for Web Summit maybe a couple of years ago, and then you even stopped down through Arafana briefly, which was awesome. But
Yeah.
I was actually taking a look through your resume. I wouldn't say resume, but through your LinkedIn profile, and I'm like super impressed with all your credentials. And having been a tennis player myself, I couldn't believe you played for Colorado State and I guess full scholarship and captain of the tennis team, which I know that's very, very difficult to get to that level. So that's like super
My tennis
impressive.
days.
It just yeah, reading this, I can see why you're so successful. But yeah,
Thank
just to
you.
kind of get things started here, we want to kind of dive into the specifics. You're an expert on immigration law. You've been doing this now for like 10 years. You've been traveling as a digital nomad, so you know quite a bit. You're on Madeira Island at the moment. So yeah, we'd love your perspective. We've got some questions here for you that I think are common questions that most nomads have. But for question number one is, if I'm here in the EU, how do I get to Madeira Island? Are there any issues I should be aware of? What is the process? Say I'm in Germany or I'm in Spain somewhere, and I want to go to Madeira Island. It's a bit cold for me. How do I get there? Or what is the
Well,
process?
well, if you're in the EU, you're an EU citizen, so you can travel to Portugal. The challenge is for those non-EU citizens. But there is something you want to just keep in mind when you are traveling within the EU. There are some restrictions that EU countries are. For example, France right now. If you come to Portugal and then you travel back to France, you're subjected to a 14-day quarantine. Okay, so there is some little quarantining restrictions, but if you're in the EU, you're EU citizen, you can travel here to Portugal.
Okay, that's awesome. So for anyone out there, if you're in the EU and you're freezing cold and you want to go to some warm weather, Jasmine says it's okay to go direct to Madeira. You have to fly direct to Madeira, is that right? Or can you go through another airport?
No, you can fly direct to Madeira.
Okay, so fly
Yeah,
direct to Madeira. When people arrive, you can get a COVID test before you leave, or you can get it on arrival. Is that right?
that's correct.
Okay.
You want to check on the arrival, because it's very restricted depending on where you're coming from. If you're coming from Lisbon, they are allowing it to be done upon arrival. They have now, from what I know, is they're no longer allowing it from certain countries. So if you want to be sure, get the PRC test before boarding the flight.
Okay. Yeah, I'm arriving next Wednesday, and I was talking to Gonzalo. That's what he was recommending. Just get it done locally, 72 hours. Then I can just walk in, smooth sailing. I think if I arrive and I get it done there, there's like a short quarantine period of like 12 hours or so,
Yeah,
is my
and
understanding.
you can also get it done if you're in Portugal. You can get it done for free. There's a link. You have to Google it. There's I think it's like a university that's doing the test for free, and so you can get it done 72 hours before, and then for the flight.
Awesome. Yeah, so for all of you all just joining us, we have Jasmin Singh live from Madeira Island. If you want to learn more about Jasmin, you can go to jasminsinghLaw.com, find out more about her, but she's an expert in immigration law. So yeah, for all of us, or for all those people that aren't from the EU, they're looking to come to Madeira, what are the suggestions you have for them?
Okay, so there's a lot of confusion going around how to travel into the EU, specifically Portugal. Since we're talking about Project Madeira, let's specifically just talk about Portugal. I don't like to use the word border closures because a lot of people are under the impression that there's no way to enter Portugal, and it's not true. Portugal right now is not permitting travel for tourism purposes. You cannot enter Portugal for tourism purposes. There's three ways you can enter the EU. I'm sorry, Portugal is obviously if you're an EU citizen, and then number two, if you're a resident of Portugal, And number three, if you're traveling for essential purposes. Where we're going to focus on our talk today is number 2 and 3 is the D7 visa and what qualifies as essential purposes. And I want to also take a moment to explain why some people are confused and commonly asked questions on some of the requirements for coming in and out. Is the EU is restricting their travel based on your nationality. Okay. The US, some of our American friends back in the US, they're confusing the EU travel restrictions with the US travel restrictions. The US travel restrictions isn't based on your nationality. It's where you've been in the previous 14 days. So if you're traveling to the US and you've been in the EU for the past 14 days, then you're no longer allowed to enter the US. So a lot of people are using going to Mexico and entering the US. This is where a lot of Americans are making the mistake, is they're applying the US law of traveling to the US to the EU, okay? So it's very important to make that distinction.
Okay, so I might need a little more clarification. So explain that to me again. So if I'm traveling from the US, can I get to Europe? Can I arrive in Madeira?
There's 3 ways you can travel into Portugal. Number 1, the obvious, you're an EU citizen. Number 2, you're a resident of Portugal, i.e. what we're going to talk about today, the D7 visa. You have the D7 visa, okay? The third way you can travel to the Portugal is for essential travel, essential purposes, and we can discuss that now. What is that? What qualifies as essential travel? Okay, so essential travel is business, investment, family, medical, humanitarian purposes. Okay, and so what does that look like? Let's play out a couple scenarios here. You could be traveling, let's say for business purposes. Perhaps you have a meeting in Portugal. You're in the wine industry and you're out in California, and for some reason you need to meet, go out to a winery in Douro Valley or Alentejo. Well, you need to get a letter from that winery or from whoever you're meeting. Get it on a professional letterhead, and it needs to explain why you need to be in Portugal. Now, this doesn't need to be a book. It just needs to briefly describe the purpose of your travel. And obviously there's credibility involved. You have it on a professional letterhead, have a contact number, a Portuguese contact information, right? Okay. That's an example of business travel. Right now, there's a lot of Americans who are interested in the Golden Visa program. It was set to expire this summer. They've actually extended it till January of next year. If you are working with an attorney or whoever you're working with on your Golden Visa, or if you're interested and you need to enter Portugal to perhaps go see property because you want to know what apartment you want to invest in, get your immigration attorney to write you a letter explaining this. That qualifies as essential travel. Okay, so that's investment. Another common one that we see is family. Okay, perhaps you have family living in Portugal. Let's suppose that your parents are retired and they're living in Portugal. Well, what you'll want to get is your birth certificate and proof that they're living in Portugal. So maybe some electricity bills or maybe a mortgage statement, anything with their address and their names linked to your birth certificate. Okay, and how the Portuguese government is defining family is your spouse, children, parents, and parents-in-laws. Okay, that all qualifies under family. So how does this work? Now let's say that you do qualify under essential travel. What does this look like now? What do you do? Like, how do you have to go get a special visa? You don't. All the Portuguese embassies and consulates around the world have informed airports that it's up to the traveler to prepare and bring to the airport the proper documentation to prove essential travel. And it's up to the airline agent to review the documentation. And if the airline agent is satisfied and they believe that your travel is true, then they can check you in and you board the flight. Okay. So there is no special visa, but I will say this: you going to the airport, be prepared to explain your travel. Make sure you have the right documentation. If you have phone numbers listed on your documents, perhaps because of business travel, tell the person on the other line in Portugal to be prepared around so-and-so time, just in case the airline agent calls them just to verify if it's true or not. What we found is that some airline agents will ask the same question 3 different times just to make sure that you're not lying. So it's really your gatekeeper is the TAP Airlines check-in person at Newark Airport. Okay, so that's how you would enter for essential travel purposes.
Okay, so we have let's see here. So at the moment, if you're living in the EU, there's the potential. If you have to travel for essential reasons, which is business, investment, family, medical, humanitarian, but you need documentation to be able to prove that that's the reason, you can get in. And then we also have like special visas. You mentioned the D7.
Right.
What is the D7 and how does that work?
Sure. So the other exception to the rule to enter into Portugal, okay, is a resident visa. You are a resident of Portugal. Let's just skip to the most popular one for remote workers, digital nomads. It's the D7. And I'll start by saying the D7 creates a lot of confusion because a lot of people think you have to, it's solely for independent, wealthy people. You have to be self-employed. All it means is that you have to demonstrate that you have sufficient money to support your stay in Portugal. So it doesn't matter whether the money comes from a trust fund, from investments. You may have an employer abroad and you're still an employee of a company, or you're self-employed. As long as you can prove that you're earning income, and I'm going to tell you what the number is, okay? That number is 680 euros a month. So 8,000 euros a year. That's basically what you want to show for the D7. So how does that look like in terms of applying and obtaining one? Well, obviously, if you're watching this video, you're outside of the country, so you're going to have to go to a Portuguese embassy or consulate to apply for the D7. Once you have all the documentation for the visa application, it takes the embassy 2 weeks to schedule your interview. And when you go in to get your interview, they'll stamp your passport with the D7 visa. You'll enter Portugal, and then you'll be scheduled for another. They take your biometrics and to essentially give you your residency card. So if you're sitting in the U.S. and you want to be a part of Project Madeira, it is realistic for you in the next month or two to it really depends on how fast you get all this documentation. If you get all the documentation in 1 month, 2 weeks to 4 weeks to the embassy, you can realistically be in Portugal by the second month. So this is if you want to come be a part of Project Madeira and you don't qualify for essential travel, you absolutely must apply for the D7 visa. The Portuguese embassies and consulates are opened around the world. I have verified today that they are open in the U.S. You can get an appointment in 2 weeks. You can get your visa stamp, enter Portugal, and still be this program goes till the summer, so there's more than enough time left for you still to be part of the program.
Yeah, and just so you all know, this is just an experimental program. We're kind of in beta at the moment. We're hoping actually the program will get extended throughout the rest of the year, which is sort of the expectation. So for the D7, are you required to stay for any sort of minimum time periods, or you can kind of come and go as you please? Are there filing requirements post getting the visa that anyone needs to be aware of, or is it's pretty straightforward?
Yeah, because anytime you apply for a resident visa and you want to be a resident of the country, you have to stay there for at least half of the time of the year, okay? Or else what will happen is they won't, when it comes time to renew your visa, they won't renew your visa if you can't show that you were physically present for at least half of the year. So the D7 visa, you do have to renew it after the first year, but maybe you just want to come for Project Madeira from the US and you just want to spend 6 months, and maybe this is just a way for you to enter and you're not interested in renewing. Or if you are interested in renewing, it's a wonderful pathway to get permanent residency in Portugal after 5 years. And then you will eventually become eligible to apply for Portuguese citizenship, which does lead to an EU passport, which is very powerful.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, we're here talking with Jasmin Singh from the law firm JasminSinghLaw.com, immigration expert for the last 10 years, and she's based in Madeira at the moment at the Savoy Palace, 5-star, with a bunch, I think like 50 other nomads, and they're having a great time because there's no restrictions.
It's awesome.
And she's also spent time in Ponta do Sol, which is more of like the local village. So she's got the village experience to 5-star experience. We got the right person here. Let's see. So let's see. I'm not an EU citizen. We got border restrictions. I think we've gone through all the options here. We covered the D7. We discussed essential travel. Anything else we should know about?
I mean, if you really want to come to Portugal, the only reason I see that you could not make it in here is because you can't prove that you have access to 8,000 euros a year. Okay, if you don't qualify for essential travel, by default it's the D7 visa. And the D7 visa, just remind you again, it's not for retirees. It's not for just solely wealthy people. You just have to demonstrate that you have 8,000 euros to support you for the year.
That's great. Yeah, because when I arrived here, I ended up coming in through the real estate visa. It probably would have been much easier getting the D7 than having to buy real estate and waiting for the visas, and it takes quite some time. So for you all out there who want to come live in Portugal and you've got income to prove, I almost equate it to like the remote work or digital nomad visa for Portugal, but it's called the D7. So it existed before all this pandemic craziness. So it's maybe mislabeled a bit.
Yeah, and look, if like I said, a lot of Americans are interested in this golden visa program. If you're working with an immigration attorney and you want to come look at investments, don't forget that qualifies as essential travel. You just need that letter from the attorney. Okay,
awesome. So let's see here. So we've got Jasmin. We've talked a bit about how to get to Madeira. So for all of you who are dying to actually get to a warmer climate, we have Madeira Island, which we just launched recently with the government in Madeira, combining a public and private effort that seems to be going very well. Just got started a little bit less than a month ago. But let's talk a bit about, okay, let's say outside of Madeira. So let's change the topic here a bit to remote work visas around the world. One question for you. What is the difference of traveling and working remotely on a tourist visa versus getting a remote worker visa?
Yeah. I wanted to make this distinction of why not just travel on your tourist visa and go work from a country on your tourist visa? Why do you need a nomad visa? So let's just look at the tourist visa first. Most tourist visas, most countries will grant you entry as a tourist for 90 or 180 days. Okay, I'll give you an example. The Schengen region, Europe, it's 90 days. If you go to Latin American countries, they'll grant you entry for 180 days. Okay, but let's say that you want to spend more time in a country than 180 days. You want to spend 1 year. You actually need to start looking at the nomad visas, because many countries will only restrict you, even if they let you in for 90 days at a time, they'll only let you in the country for 180 days total. So, if you want to spend that next year somewhere, you actually have to apply for a residency visa. And I'll go ahead and tell you another trick I tell my clients is, if you're trying to decide whether you want to play with your tourist visa and max out the 180 days, and then there's some countries like Thailand where you can leave and then restart the visa, and they don't really govern their tourist visa. And then there's some other countries where they're very ambiguous. They don't really tell you what the maximum stay is. They just tell you it's at our discretion until you can actually prove that you have an established life outside. If you ever find yourself dealing with those countries, use this trick. Is, as a general rule, most countries, once you spend 180 days in that country, you become a tax resident. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to pay taxes, because some countries actually have rules that if the income was not generated within the country, then they're not going to subject to taxation. But I don't want to get too into the tax part. The purposes of this is to get you to start thinking, once you become a tax resident, you're no longer a tourist in a country. And anytime you're starting to bend those lines, then you're probably not going to be able to re-enter that country wherever you are. So I tell you this because it helps. And when you're making that decision of, okay, do I want to go somewhere for 90 days? Do I want to go somewhere for 180 days? Or do I want to, plant my roots for a year? So now we have over 25 countries that are extending this remote worker visa. And almost all of them are giving you 1 year on the visa. And, there's a lot of different countries, but I can tell you, I've found trends in these visas. And I'll go ahead and discuss with you what some of the general requirements are for most of these visas. Is these countries want you to come in and spend money, but they don't want you working there.
Okay.
Okay. So clearly you have to show proof of income from, whether you're self-employed or from a company outside of that country. So how do you show that? Maybe if you're self-employed, P&L statements, your last year's tax returns, something that hits a little bit home for the US is your W-2s, 1099s. You have to show this documentation so that you actually have income. So expect to have to go through that exercise. Number two is the wealthier countries, the Antiguas, the Caribbean islands, the European countries. These countries are going to want to see a proof of health insurance. So there's a lot of wonderful Nomad health insurances out there. I think I have one for like 50 euros a month. They're very easy to sign up online, but they're all going to want some sort of, if you enter, you have some sort of health insurance. The third one, it's not all the countries, but you do need to be aware of it. Some of these countries are asking for some criminal background checks. In some countries you call them police certificates. In some countries, like in the US, we call them FBI background checks. Something to consider if you do have something in your history. Not all of these countries are requiring it, but some are. And then the other thing you want to be conscious of as you're choosing, looking which country is ideal for you, is the application fees vary dramatically between these countries. I mean, we're talking anywhere from like $150 to $2,000, right? So expect to be able to prove or meet those 4 requirements to, if you focus on those 4 requirements, you will be eligible for, most of those digital nomad visas.
Okay, so we got proof of income, proof of health insurance, background check, could be an FBI check in the US, and then check on the application fees. We got actually a couple questions here. Maybe we'll just take a second to take a look at these. Allison Alvira asked, do you have a list of those countries, the 25? Or where can you find those? Okay.
I do. How about afterwards I'll post them on the comments?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, afterwards, if you want to go through and just answer any of these comments. So anyone out there, if you guys have questions, comments, put them in the comments and Jasmin will get back to you.
I mean, I wish I could go through every visa, but the reality is they're very, very similar. So what I did is I just chose the main requirements, the trends that I'm seeing in them. So just focus on those 4 categories that I told you.
Okay. We have one other question too from Vikram. He said, a quick question, please. Are these guidelines applicable for non-US residents too?
Not okay. So are we talking about the Madeira project? Or are we talking about the remote?
I'm not sure. He doesn't say here. Maybe just hit on both of those.
Because I just okay. So it sounds like a question you would ask when we were talking about how to enter Portugal. Okay. And if you're not, that this does apply to you. If you're not an EU citizen, basically it applies to you. Think of it that way. Okay,
great. So Allison will provide you with a list of those countries. We just had Andrew Jernigan just joined us. He is with a Nomad insurance program. So yeah, nice to join us, Andrew. He joins us typically on our Friday Clubhouse Lives at 5 o'clock. So nice to see you, Andrew.
Well, perfect. There's the insurance you need for some of these visas.
That's right. Andrew, leave us the URL for your visa and we'll get you some customers. Let's see. One other question here. What are any suggestions I should consider before selecting a remote worker visa?
Okay. We're during the pandemic. We can't assume that every country is open or every country is opening in their own sort of pace. So there's some countries where embassies and consulates are not open. If you're looking at, for example, Norway has a remote worker visa. If you're looking at that specific program, then I suggest you look online in your home country to just make sure whether that embassy is processing visas. Okay. Most embassies and consulates are up and running from my experience and, me going through this process, but there are a few that are not. So it's something to consider. The second thing is income. Depending on what visa, what country you're looking at, the requirement, the threshold for how much you should be earning for them to extend you that 1 year is going to change. I'm going to tell you, Iceland is somewhere north of 86,000 US dollars. But the Caribbean islands, the income requirements are high. I found a trend in the digital nomad visas. There's usually 3 categories. Okay, if you make above 4,000 euros, $4,100, you can qualify for essentially all of them. All of the remote worker visas. Then there's another category of countries between 4,000 and 15,000 euros, give and take currency conversions. Those are sort of like the mid countries, and then
4,000 to 1,500. I think you said 15,000.
Yeah, this is monthly.
4,000 to 1,500. Okay.
Yeah, this is monthly income. Okay, that's the second tier of countries, the threshold, and then obviously there's the third threshold, which is about 1,500 euros. A country like Mexico, for example, would fall in those countries. Most of the countries in Latin America fall under the 1,600 US dollar, 1,500 euros. Another way of thinking it, wealthier first world countries, that threshold is going to be higher. Climates, clearly, you decide on whether you want to be on the beach or you can go to Estonia. Croatia just launched their program. Greece is talking about launching their program. Something else to consider is maybe you want to be in a country long term. For example, Portugal. Well, check and see if that specific digital nomad visa has any potential to convert into some sort of permanent resident card. Okay. Or, and then if it does convert into some sort of permanent residency for citizenship. And in Portugal, let's go back to using this as an example. If you come in on the D7 visa, the digital nomad visa, is you can eventually apply for permanent residency, and after permanent residency, apply for the Portuguese citizenship, which is an EU passport. So these are some things just to keep in mind, because maybe you're not exploring for a year and you're trying to set up something a little bit long term. But those are about 4 factors I would say to keep in mind when you're selecting.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I know when I moved to Portugal, because my original intent in being here was just to spend a little bit of time in Portugal, but then also be able to travel around the world very flexibly. And so that's where the golden visa made a lot of sense, because I think I've only got to spend maybe up to 2 weeks max, and then I have a path to citizenship, and it's like an investment.
Here's something. There's a lot of people from the UK that are interested in the golden visa program. If you actually want to live in Portugal, in a lot of ways, the D7 visa is a better approach to take. It's faster. You don't have to make a 350,000 euro investment, but you do have the constriction that you do have to have a physical presence within Portugal. And again, remember, these residency visas want to see that you're living in these countries for at least half of the time of the year. However, the golden visa is a great option if you want residency or an EU passport, but you don't want to have to comply with residency requirements. Okay, so that's why I tell people between the D7 and the golden visa, it really depends on where you want to be living. If you don't want to be living in Portugal, but you want to have access to an EU passport eventually, then you want to go with the golden visa. If you want to live in Portugal and you don't want to make an investment and you're okay spending at least half of your time in Portugal, go with the D7.
Definitely. Yeah, this D7 visa is a really, really great visa. And I think, yeah, a lot of people get interested in Portugal because of the golden visa, but they don't realize that this D7 visa exists, which actually I think is
Yeah,
maybe a much better option and much faster for a lot of people too. Like you said, you can get it in like 2 weeks to a month, where the golden visa can take a lot longer. At least it's
correct,
my
correct.
experience. Okay, so for everyone here, we've been going through immigration, talking about being able to arrive in Madeira Island with Jasmin Singh. She's a digital nomad immigration attorney. You can find out more, jasminsinghLaw.com. She's got a super impressive background. I was like, I think from Colorado State University, where she was captain of the tennis team, magna cum laude. So she's got quite a background. I can't remember how many languages you speak, but she worked as a congressional intern for a couple of years, and I think even in Spain you worked too, right? With the ambassador there.
I was selected to work in the U.S. Embassy in Spain.
That's amazing. So yeah, you've got
Yeah,
quite a resume here. I was seeing, yeah, they only selected like 7 or 8 people across the whole
that's correct.
country, and you were selected. So yeah, we've got an amazing resource here with Jasmin, and then she graduated University of Washington from the law school. This is like 10 years ago. She's got a massive background being in immigration law, and then she's been traveling as a digital nomad for quite some time. Where are the main places that you've been to, or where do you like to travel to? And I think you were down in Mexico for a bit. You spent a lot of time here in Portugal. Like, maybe give us a little background in terms of your travels, just for the interest.
Yeah, sure. So I've been a nomad now officially for about 2.5 years. I like to spend at least 6 months in a country, because when I get settled into a country, I like to have my office space. I like to have my monitor. I have to have my personal trainer, a gym. So I like to get in a routine in a country. I've been spending, let's say I spent time in Mexico, I spent time in Portugal, Nicaragua. You know, I would love to spend some time in Indonesia. Portugal has been my favorite so far. There's just, I'm a big sailor, so it's good for New York, you know, working on the U.S. time zone. Great weather. Madeira is the first for me, and I've been pleasantly surprised with Madeira. It's exceeded my expectations.
Cool. Because I remember last time you were here, you were doing a lot of sailing. This was in the fall. And if you were like learning how to sail, or you're working on your skills, or just doing it for fun?
No, I sail. That's my hobby. I do it every weekend. I do it in Lisbon. I race regattas there. I did it back in New York. I'm in the process of looking for a boat right now in Madeira. If you're in the Savoy Hotel, obviously I'm going to invite you. I'm looking at a boat to take 5 people out this weekend. So I always sort of gravitate to countries that have water and access to sailing.
That's great. Yeah. So if anyone here is on Madeira or is a big sailor, Jasmin's definitely someone to connect with. She's quite a, yes, you're made for Portugal. Maybe, maybe
And
it's
I like
part of
wine.
your heritage at some point. You got to check the DNA. Let's see here. So anything else about Jasmin? Looks like we've gotten some questions. Jasmin will go in and answer any questions that you all have. So if you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments. We will be reproducing this video and sharing it in other locations. Let's see here. I guess on your end, Jasmin, maybe just tell us a bit about Madeira. You've been there for a little while. You've been in the village. Now you're in the VIP area. What's happening there, and how's been your experience so far? What should people expect?
Okay, so Punta del Sol, where the Nomad Village actually is, where the co-working space is. I'm not just saying, but it is actually my favorite part of the island. It's beautiful. They've converted a culture center, the first floor, into a co-working space. It seats about 20, I believe, 26 people, and it's structured very good. They have monitors that you can just go in and plug in your computer. It's more than sufficient outlets. It's set up, and it also has a lot of air space outside to actually work in. And then just in front of the co-working, 5 minutes is the beach. So if you want to, you know, grab a beer after work with the other nomads, you know, we all find each other by the beach there. Punta del Sol is about 25 minutes away from Funchal. That's where most of the nomads are. There's another group staying at the Savoy Hotel. The Savoy Hotel has a digital nomad sort of package. And we're also doing things together as a community here. Some of us are going back and forth between Punta do Sol and Funchal. From what I've been told, eventually people at the Savoy will be taken to the hotel in Caleta. So those two communities will be, or not two communities, but will be closer together. Other than that, Madeira, like I said, has exceeded my expectations. It's very chill. If you like nature and like hiking, you could not be in a better place. Just if you're within Portugal, other parts of Portugal are closed. The restaurants aren't open. They actually are here till 6 o'clock during the week, which is kind of nice, and on the weekends till at least 5 o'clock.
Cool. Yeah, I've been hearing, the food there is supposed to be really good, and some really nice like meals in the evenings. Like I heard, like for €8 you can get quite a meal with wine and everything. So I'm really excited because I'm actually arriving on Wednesday. I'm going to be there for the week and just meeting with some of the accommodation providers, trying to get more people signed up in Punta do Sol, and then onboarding some of our bigger hosts, and then obviously wanting to catch up with you all and check out all the different places. So yeah, for you all, Madeira is kind of like a mini Hawaii. There's some amazing hiking. There's amazing surfing. We have one question here. What about surfing in Madeira in the wintertime? Do you find it as a nice potential? I don't think you're a surfer, but what do you think?
I
Is it
hate
a good place for
cold.
surfers?
I like surfing, but I hate cold water. So I'll just say this: there are people surfing, and I know this because I'm seeing them on the group chats, and I do know there's like surfing clubs and surfing schools that are still they're still in operations. I've been told the water's not as cold as Lisbon, but there is surfing here.
Okay, awesome. So that's for Girl on the Wave out of Very Sarah. She was asking that question. But yeah, I think, surfing in Madeira is really good. That's one of the things I'm hoping to do while I'm there. But I've seen some amazing on the highest point of Madeira. It just looks super, super beautiful. So yeah, we're trying to keep these interviews about 20 to 30 minutes. I'm not sure how long we've gone for, but I just wanted to kind of wrap things up here. We're super excited that we had Jasmin live with us today. I guess before we leave, Jasmin, any parting thoughts for the audience?
I keep seeing these immigration questions. If you really want to come, get a D7 visa. It's not closed. You really can still make this program. So please don't, stay away from the confusing information out there. If you don't qualify for essential travel, then apply for the D7 visa.
Cool. Well, hey, Jasmin, really nice having you on the show. We really appreciate all your time and effort today, and hopefully I'll see you out there in another week or so. And then for everyone here in the group, if you get a chance, anyone in Europe, we'd love to see you on Madeira Island. For those outside of Madeira, as Jasmin recommended, the D7 is really the way to go. And just surviving this pandemic and trying to get a little travel in and just enjoy ourselves, get a little sun, get away from the cold, and maybe go out for a sail or hit some tennis balls once in a while.
Yeah.
All right, Jasmin. Well,
Thank
thanks
you,
so
Dave.
much. All right. Cheers. Great seeing you today.
Bye.
Look great. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.